Thank you for joining us for UC Berkeley's scoping session regarding the Bowditch Student Housing Project. My name is Kyle Gibson, and I'm the Director of Communications for UC Berkeley's Administration Division. And I'm also joined today by my colleague Shraddha Navali Patil from our Physical and Environmental Planning Office within UC Berkeley's Capital Strategies Department. Before we dive in, I want to clarify exactly why we're here today. The purpose of a scoping session is to notify the public that a lead agency, in this case UC Berkeley, is evaluating a project under the California Environmental Quality Act, commonly referred to as CEQA. We are also here to solicit public comment regarding the type and extent of environmental analyses to be undertaken. It's important to keep in mind that this is not a Q&A session. Rather, it is a formal forum for us to receive your input on the proposed project. Our procedure for today's scoping session is pretty straightforward. We'll start with a brief presentation that gives you an overview of the proposed project and a quick overview of the California Environmental Quality Act. After that, we'll open the floor to receive public comments on the scope of the subsequent environmental impact report for the Bowditch Student Housing Project. Please note that there will be a time limit of 2 minutes for all public comments received today. Every comment we receive will become part of the official public record. And with that, I'd like to introduce Shraddha, who will walk us through how the university receives comments, followed by a brief presentation about the proposed project and the associated CEQA analysis and process. Shraddha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kyle. My name is Shraddha. I'm a senior planner in the Physical and Environmental Planning Office for UC Berkeley's Capital Strategies. In addition to comments received today, the deadline to submit comments as stated in the Notice of Preparation is 5 p.m. on April 20th, 2026. These comments will become part of the public record. Comments can be submitted to us in writing by emailing planning@berkeley.edu or by U.S. mail. There is no limit to the length of the written comments submitted to us by email or by U.S. mail. However, they must be received by the deadline of April 20th, 2026 at 5 p.m. Now, I would like to play a brief presentation about the proposed project and the associated California Environmental Quality Act process and analysis. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This scoping meeting is being held in a virtual format, providing a similar opportunity for engagement as an in-person meeting. As with all scoping meetings, our purpose is to notify the public and collect input on the content of the subsequent environmental impact report. Specifically, we are here to receive comments on a range of alternative and technical analyses that would be considered in the draft subsequent environmental impact report. Comments are most helpful when they focus on the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project, whether they are direct or indirect. We will look at the subsequent environmental impact report process and schedule later in this presentation. But please note that we are at the beginning of the process, which is anticipated to last approximately 6 to 9 months. Let's begin with an overview of the project. This student housing project is envisioned as a key addition to UC Berkeley's campus, providing up to 2,000 beds for our undergraduate student population. Situated at a prominent Berkeley intersection and the historic Anna Head School for Girls, the project seeks to acknowledge its historical roots while creating a multifaceted student living experience. This vision includes rich outdoor spaces, varied dining options, and inclusive student amenities. The priorities for this project are centered on equity and inclusion, the quality of student life, historic sensitivity, and efficiency and cost. Furthermore, we are focused on delivering high-quality student housing, hybrid dining, engaging outdoor experiences, and a dedicated amenity podium. This graphic illustrates the location of the proposed project within the context of the UC Berkeley campus and its land use zone. Taking a closer look at the site, the project is located in the city of Berkeley in Alameda County, at 2538 Channing Way. Situated at the southwest corner of Channing Way and Bowditch Street, the site is just 2 blocks south of the main campus. The project site is the former Anna Head School for Girls, a complex of 6 brown shingle buildings built between 1892 and 1927. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1980 and is a City of Berkeley landmark. The complex has been part of UC Berkeley since 1963. Building A, Alumni Hall, and Buildings E and F will remain. Buildings B, C, and D will be demolished as part of this development. The proposed complex would include up to 550,000 gross square feet, providing up to 2,000 beds alongside a dining hall and modern student amenities. The portion of the complex along Channing Way would reach up to 26 stories in height, while the portion along Bowditch Street would be up to 14 stories. This three-dimensional graphic provides a visual representation of the housing project. You can see the corresponding details in the legend shown here. 1. Channing Entry. 2. Controlled Passage 1. 3. Central Glade. 4. Seating Steps. 5. Controlled Passage 2. And 6. Haste Entry. Looking at the site plan, the main entry plaza is located on Channing Way, leading to a lobby and lounge space. The ground floor features a dining program for both residents and the campus community. A portion of this will be housed in the repurposed interior of the existing Anna Head Alumni Hall. The dining area opens onto a shared courtyard and glade, situated between Alumni Hall and the adjacent Martinez Commons student housing. On the second floor, the podium will contain amenities such as a fitness center, community kitchen, and terraces. Please note that no vehicular parking is provided on site, though a passenger drop-off is proposed on Channing Way. The following graphics illustrate our conceptual renderings. Here, we see the overall housing project. The main entrance, the shared glade space, the dining courtyard, and finally, the open space between the new project, the existing Martinez Commons student housing, and buildings E and F. Turning to the California Environmental Quality Act, the purpose of this meeting is to gather input on the scope of the subsequent environmental impact report and the range of alternatives to be analyzed. This is a robust process designed to ensure that stakeholders and the community have ample opportunity to weigh in with meaningful participation at this critical early stage. We are at the beginning of the California Environmental Quality Act process, and there will be more opportunities for public involvement. As a brief primer, the California Environmental Quality Act was enacted in 1970 to require public agencies to evaluate the potential environmental effects of a project. At its core, it is a transparency law intended to consider and disclose to the public and decision-makers the environmental implications of their actions, increase public understanding of and participation in the environmental review process, and identify ways to avoid or reduce the potential significant environmental effects of these actions to the extent feasible through imposition of mitigation measures or alternatives. Crucially, the California Environmental Quality Act evaluates the project's effect on the environment, not the environment's effect on the project. As the lead agency, UC Berkeley is responsible for the environmental review, which must be certified before any project approval can occur. An EIR, an Environmental Impact Report, is one of the California Environmental Quality Act's mechanisms for identifying and disclosing potentially significant physical impacts of a project. An EIR is an informational document that considers the environmental effects of a project. The EIR discloses the significant effects of the proposed project on the environment, identifies feasible mitigation measures, and describes potentially feasible alternatives to the proposed project. A project, defined by the California Environmental Quality Act, generally has two components. 1. An activity that requires a discretionary action by the lead agency, like approval. And 2. Will have a direct or indirect impact on the environment. UC Berkeley has determined that a subsequent EIR, SEIR, will be prepared for the proposed project. A subsequent EIR is prepared when changes to the project occur after a project's original EIR approval. This SEIR will be tiering from the 2021 Long Range Development Plan, or LRDP EIR. The LRDP EIR analyzed development on the project site, which is within the city environs properties. Specifically, the 2021 LRDP EIR envisioned 210,000 square feet, 8 stories tall, of academic life and campus life development for the project site, also known as the Anna Head Redevelopment Site, CE5, in the 2021 LRDP EIR. Because the proposed project includes housing and is approximately 340,000 square feet larger than the redevelopment analyzed in the LRDP EIR, the proposed project could result in new or more severe significant impacts related to cultural resources. And this and other potential impacts will be analyzed in the SEIR. In accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, the SEIR will focus on changes that have occurred since certification of the LRDP EIR, and will focus on whether or not those changes would result in new significant or substantially more severe previously identified significant effects. All California Environmental Quality Act topics will be analyzed in the SEIR. This slide shows the list of California Environmental Quality Act environmental topics that will be analyzed in the SEIR. Where new significant effects or substantially more severe previously identified significant effects are identified, the SEIR will discuss feasible mitigation measures to avoid or reduce those effects. The EIR will include additional topics as required by the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, including growth inducement, cumulative impacts, and alternatives. The EIR will describe and evaluate a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed project that would feasibly attain most of the proposed project's basic objectives while avoiding or substantially lessening any significant effects of the proposed project. The no project alternative will also be evaluated as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. We are currently at the scoping phase. The comment period for this phase ends on April 20th, 2026. Scoping is one of the opportunities to provide input in the EIR process. There will be additional opportunities. Looking ahead, we anticipate publishing the draft EIR in late summer 2026, followed by the final EIR in late 2026. Certification and project approval are considered for early 2027. We encourage you to check the Capital Strategies website for updates. Once again, your input is vital. Based on the comments received, UC Berkeley may adjust the scope of the subsequent environmental impact report as necessary. Public comments will be accepted through 5 p.m. on April 20th, 2026. We are looking for input on technical issues and the range of alternatives to be evaluated. You may submit written comments via email to planning@berkeley.edu with the subject line Channing Bowditch Student Housing Project EIR. You may also submit via standard mail to the address shown on your screen. Thank you for your participation.
And now we'll be opening the floor to receive public comments on the scope of the subsequent environmental impact report for the Channing Bowditch Student Housing Project. Please remember that there is a 2-minute limit for all comments received today. Speakers may not give some or all of their allotted time to other people. While there is a 2-minute time limit for comments received at today's scoping session, please remember that there is no limit to the length of written comments that can be submitted to us by email or by U.S. mail before the deadline in the notice of preparation. Keep in mind that this is not a Q&A session. All comments received will be considered by UC Berkeley in their preparation of the draft subsequent environmental impact report. I also want to emphasize that there is no additional weight given to comments received as part of today's scoping session. All comments, whether received today or in writing by email or U.S. mail before the deadline, will be responded to equally as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. And now, if you would like to give public comments on the proposed project, I invite you to please raise your hand in the Zoom app. If you are participating by telephone, please press *9 in order to raise your hand. When I call on your name or the last 3 digits of your telephone number, I will then unmute your microphone. A 2-minute timer will start when you begin to speak. When you are finished with your comments, or when 2 minutes have elapsed, I will mute your microphone and then call on the next speaker. And now I will begin with the first person who has their hand raised. Isaac, I am going to unmute your microphone and please give your public comments.
Good afternoon. I am here on behalf of the Berkeley Architectural Heritage Association, and I have some comments concerning cultural resources impacts on the project. As mentioned, the project proposes demolishing much of the historic National Register Anna Head School campus. And in particular, it demolishes Building C, or Channing Hall, which embodies much of the architectural significance and the historical importance of the building as one of the first shingle-style buildings in Berkeley. Furthermore, in terms of alternates that the project that are considered as part of the EIR, it's very important that this include alternates that propose preserving Channing Hall and otherwise maximizing the project objectives. There are schemes that the university has studied that do provide dense student housing on the parcel, perhaps even approaching the project objectives as stated in the base project. And any alternates should maximize project objectives and retain Channing Hall, as this is the most effective way to mitigate much of the cultural resources impacts. It would be advisable for the university to include both an alternate that preserves Channing Hall in situ and maximizes density, and one that moves the Channing Hall on the site itself in order to better accommodate the massing. There should be an alternate for both of these schemes. And furthermore, the analysis of the feasibility of the alternate should include the benefits provided by the building itself in terms of amenities for the residents.
Great. Thank you for your comments, Isaac. And now I will go ahead and unmute, looks like Deborah Lustig. Deborah, you are unmuted, and please give your comments.
Hi, I'm a university employee, but I'm here on my lunch break, not on university time. I worked in the building for the Anna Head School building for 15 years, from 2006 to 2021. And I wanted to speak primarily about transportation and cultural resources. So that was already an incredibly congested area to drive and walk around. And with the People's Park building, it will be even more congested. And I realize the students living in the new dorms won't have cars, but there are all the drop-offs and pickups, deliveries, friends and family. And those are very narrow streets, so those are not great places to have so many students. I'm very pro housing, and I'd love to see some housing on that site, but it's just too big for that neighborhood, especially given the other planned developments. I also wanted to mention the cultural resources. So in your presentation, you spoke about the Anna Head School history, which is very important. But another aspect of the cultural resources of that building is that it was home to the Institute for the Study of Social Change, which was later renamed, which was founded by esteemed Professor Troy Duster in 1976 as the first institute in the whole University of California system focused on race and stratification. And so to lose that history is really unfortunate and sad, and something that we have alternatives that the university has already considered and should consider more fully, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Now, if anybody else would like to give public comment, please use the raised hand feature to let us know, and we will then call on you and unmute your microphone to give public comments. Are there any other participants that would like to give public comments? Okay, we have no one else that would like to give public comments. So with that, I would like to conclude today's online scoping session. I want to thank everyone that was able to join us today for making time out of your day to join us and give us your comments and to hear about the proposed project and the California Environmental Quality Act. Please remember that the deadline to submit comments is April 20, 2026 at 5:00 p.m. All comments received before the 5:00 p.m. deadline will be responded to equally as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. Thank you again for joining us today. Go Bears.